Hello, chess family. It's time for another game from Logical Chess. It's me, National Master Jesse James. Let's get to it. In this game, we're going to be seeing Chekhover versus Rudigoski. And this is a very nice game. In this game, Chekhover is just going to get a very nice positional advantage. But remember, we just can't win with just positional chess. It's actually going to end with a very nice tactic at the end, which is actually very common. When you build up a position so well, tactics will flow from a superior position, as Fisher once said. But also in this quote, we did get the strategy requires thought, tactics requires observation by Max EU. I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyways, let's get to this beautiful game. Here we go. D4, D5, C4, E6. Like most good positional games, it starts off with D4. Here we're going to be seeing the Queen's Gambit. And like most people, they're going to go ahead and decline. Knight F3, Knight F6, Bishop G5, Bishop E7. This is one of the main reasons why White will play this opening, because, well, this light square bishop over here is just going to be bad because the bishop gets blocked in by its pawn structure. Rather with White gets their bishop out, so White has all good pieces. Black's big challenge is to see if he can get this bishop out and rook out. Let's see what happens. Pawn to E3, castles, Knight C3, just very basic development right here. Knight B to D7. Here Black is trying to push for one of his main ideas, or he should be trying to push for one of his main ideas, trying to get the pawn to C5. This is going to go ahead and try and dislodge the pawn on D4. If they take with the pawn, well, then they get the isolated pawn, and Black can play against that. And if they take with the knight, then it's going to be equal position. The other thing you can play for is E5, but typically I like this C5 move a lot more. All right, Queen C2 gets played. White's delaying the bishop, of course, because anytime you bring it out, then Black will take, and you have to move the bishop twice. So they're playing that little game. And Black plays pawn C6, a move I'm definitely not too fond of. This is definitely not a move I would like to play. Again, I would like to play something like C5. You just got to be a little careful with some of the takes here, giving a weak pawn to Black. Okay, well, C6 gets played, and we just keep developing. Here, White's done with the game. Bishop to D3. Black goes ahead and takes on Q. Bishop takes on C4, and Knight to D5. A very nice idea. This was by Emmanuel Lasker. He used to play this all the time. Because White has more space in the position, Black wants to make trades. And with this move of Knight to D5, he's trying to trade off the bishop because, well, we can't really go back to F4 because the Knight will take, and we can't go back to H4 because Bishop takes. And, maybe even some Knight trades here in the future, too. So Bishop trades, Queen takes. Nice move. And here we go. Castles. Here the game looks pretty normal, although Black is definitely in a worse position. Again, Black is trying to achieve C5. If Black doesn't create the counterplay, well, then White's just going to be able to start pushing forward in the center and also on the queen side. Here we go. B5. Now this is a double-edged move. Either this will work or this will not work. Unfortunately, when B5 gets played, it made a major hole in Black's position, or a weak square. Your job, find this weak square. Not the weak pawn, but the weak square. Hopefully you found it. Here, C5 has become very, very weak, so this is going to be hopefully an outpost for us. But also, we have our first weakness of the game, which is the C6 pawn. For the rest of the game, White, or Chekhover, is going to go ahead and play against this, and also put pressure on the king side. Remember, use the two weaknesses principle. If you just try to attack one thing in chess, it's very easy to defend. But when you create two weaknesses, it's a sure strategy to win the game. So, Bishop to E2. Of course, we'd like to play Bishop D3, but here you have to be very careful. Knight B4 goes into some variations, which really aren't needed. Anytime you have a good position, there's really no need to go into complications. Yes, we do have Bishop takes H7 check, but here after King H8, the Queen must move to, I don't know, let's go to E4. And we're looking to try and come over here. Unfortunately, the Queen's coming over here. Black has a few different moves that they can play. I'm actually kind of curious why this F5. Yeah, well, here definitely saying it's equality. Again, this goes into major complications we're not too interested in. So, Bishop to E2 gets played, just a nice simple move, and pawn to A6. Now, the reason why B5 gets played, and if you are playing in these kind of positions, you might want to try this idea, is, well, we want to play the pawn to C5, and we get a free tempo right here, but we got to make sure that we play A6 first. Why? Well, if you try to play C5 right away, the B5 pawn will just hang. So, A6 gets played, but now we're going to take advantage of this weak square. What do you play here to make sure C5 cannot get played? What's the best move here? Simple chess. Here we're going to go ahead and play knight to e4. This is a very nice move as it's stopping c5 and also maybe thinking about ideas about going over to the king side. You can see white has two very nice outposts on e5 and c5. We don't want to play them right away for either one because we don't want them just to take. Remember, when you have a space advantage, as white is already starting to encroach on black's territory on the 5th rank. Remember, from 4 and back, this is white's territory. From 5 and back, this is black's. We're already starting to attack the 5th territory. We want to go ahead and keep pieces on the board. So black went ahead and played bishop b7, a very natural move to defend the pawn. And here, a very nice idea, knight to e5. Most people here would be like, well, aren't we just trading off for no good reason? Always think about the weak squares that you get in the position. If they do take, why would this be a bad idea? A new square gets weak, and we have 2 weak squares in the position. Why is knight takes a bad idea? Well, hopefully you calculate it out. If knight takes, pawn takes, our new weak square is, d6 right here. So now we have 2 weak squares in this position, d6 and c5, and we can see that the knight can get to either one right here, right? So here white would just have a very good position and even some good attacking chances here on the king side. So, of course, black did not want to do this as I did calculate ahead. And black chooses just to go ahead and defend and, again, try to get this c5 pawn pushed. And, well, this is the main defender for the c5 square, so white does a good idea. Let's just go ahead and trade off, and now jump this knight to c5 here. This knight is definitely the best piece on the board, and it's very dominant over its bishop. Definitely black needs to keep an eye on the c6 pawn, as there will be ideas later on of maybe knight takes and then the queen can take, or maybe we'll put a rook over here and put pressure on the pawn. Here a nice idea for white could be just to do maybe Alekhine's gun and triple up on this file. Of course, we might need to kick the knight, so this is a long-term plan. Black played queen to c7, and here white chooses rook f to d1. Now with this move, you should already get a good idea what white's up to. What's white up to in this position? Well, white's definitely thinking about playing e4 in some of these positions, maybe even some rook lifts later on. White's playing for an active game. I think rook ac1 technically would be a little bit more accurate as it's trying to make threats in the position. But rook f d1, definitely not a bad move. Black continues with rook to d8, which I think this was the wrong rook. I think you need this rook to keep defending this c6 pawn. Maybe if you want to develop this rook, we can go over there. Now white is able to develop with the threat, rook a to c1. Again, now we see the knight takes b7 plan with queen takes c6. Bishop to c8. A sad state of affairs when your bishop is to go back to c8, and it's actually the best square for you. Again, this knight is just dominating this bishop. An idea you might think about is maybe playing the bishop to trade for the knight. And this would be a very good idea because it'd be good bishop versus, it'd be good knight versus bad bishop once this trade has been made. But white has a very good idea here. Queen to e4. What is the idea of this move? This looks like a weird move. What is white up to? What's white's plan? Hopefully you figured it out. Here, white is actually going for the kingside weakness. And the weakest pawn on the kingside is the h7 pawn. So so white's going to go for the 2 weakness principle. Yes, we do have the c6 weakness, but now we want to go for the h7 weakness. Okay? We want to create some threats over here because we can't just win off c6. So what does queen e4 get ready to do? Well, there's nice ideas about maybe maneuvering over to h4 to attack, and also just a simple bishop to d3 to put pressure on h7 for checkmate. Of course, we know our opponent won't fall for this, but when you make these threats, you're going to start making them create weaknesses. If the knight comes back over to f6, let's, for instance, after like this idea, the queen goes to h4, maybe we can try to dislodge the knight. If they play g6, well, now there's dark square weaknesses around the king. If they play h6, there might be some sacrifices that we can play against it. So anything that they do will have a weakness, and this is something that you can play against. Black went ahead and chose knight to f6, queen to h4, again, keeping an eye on this h7 pawn. Maybe some e4, e5 threats with bishop d3, maybe rook coming over. There's lots of different ideas for here for white to keep making progress. Black went ahead and played queen e5, trying to create some counterplay, but this is a very, very poor decision. White already, you can see, has a lot of potential on the king side, And black is over here trying to grab a pawn. And unfortunately for them, white has a very nice way to keep the pawns defended. Here white just plays the simple a3, and black tries pawn to b4. What should we play here as white? Here white's just going to create a very nice pawn structure that really can't be attacked. You have to calculate the whole way through. What do we play here for white? a4, of course, the idea. Let's play pawn b3, and this will never be touched. In fact, this b4 is almost isolated right now because, well, this queen's in the way, so the pawn can't come over here to defend. So maybe white will try to attack on b4. There's plenty of queenside weaknesses now that white may be able just to win on the queenside. But I like the way Chekhover plays. Again, he's playing for the whole board. He's playing for the two weaknesses. We've got the one weakness over here. Let's attack over here now. This is definitely a very nice positional game. Notice how white is not moving any of their pawns. These pawns are nice and safe. White is just manipulating the pieces and trying to create some weaknesses in black's position. True positional chess. Knight goes to d7. Of course, black wants to go ahead and make some trades here. Yeah, I mean, this is an idea. To be honest, I'm not sure if this is really going to help out too much because, well, you're really just helping getting rid of this knight, but now you're going to let white double the rooks, and the rooks are going to be able to slide over. Things can definitely get messy here. There is a threat with this knight move, which is very simple. Hopefully you see it. What's black's small threat here? Well, whenever the knight trades, it stops defending the a4 pawn. So simple chess. Let's just go ahead and fix our pawn structure. Pawn to b3. And knight takes, and do we take with the pawn? Do we take with the rook? Hopefully no one's thinking pawn takes here. Remember, c6 is the pawn weakness. So we're going to go ahead and play rook takes. This gets a nice active move because it's attacking the queen. But again, we're keeping the weakness alive. I've seen so many people that they get a backwards pawn and they take with the pawn. It's like, how do you attack the weakness now? You can't, right? So rook takes is very easy. And again, we have some ideas about attacking on the king side. Black plays queen to b6. Double up, right? c6 is definitely the weakness. We can see the bishop can even jump over here to attack on c6 too. Bishop to b7. And a nice move here. Definitely a positional idea. Bishop f3 is a good move. But there's another idea we could play in this position, which was pawn to a5. Now this may look like a weird idea, but this is going to stop the pawn from coming up to a5, which black might try to trade off the bishops in the future. Probably not, as this pawn's too weak. This bishop needs to stay here. But it's definitely it enclosing it in, and also making this pawn, again, one of the isolated pawns. Now this idea, like after the queen moves away to a7, we can play something like rook to c4 and rook takes on b4. In fact, I don't really see a good way to defend against this. But whenever you have a good position, or when you see a good move, look for a better one. Especially in this kind of position, white can just keep probing and keep making threats here. Here we go. Bishop d3, again, attacking h7. Will they fall for this? No, probably not. But again, idea, they're going to have to make a weakness here. Black chose g6. What is the weakness? Do you remember what is weakness whenever they play g6? The dark squares. And you can see that white is going to just take over these dark squares and do it right away with. This is a nice move. Queen to f6. Now this king cannot move anywhere. The queen's bad. The bishop's bad. These rooks are stuck on the back rank. Now let's look at white's pieces. The rooks are focused on the c6 pawn. This is the only half-open file here, which, well, I guess there's another one right here. But this is on a half-open file that's actually attacking a pawn that's backwards. Notice that this is not so bad as this pawn's just being defended. And this bishop, well, is doing a good job by attacking on the king side and can even be used to attack the c6 weakness. Definitely a very nice positional game here by Chekhover. All right, rook to d6. And how do we keep making progress here? There's two different ideas I would try in this position. Do you have any ideas? How would you try to make your position better here? Because a lot of times in these kind of positions, we see that our opponent is very, very weak. But how do we actually take advantage of that? Black really can't move around too much. What do we do? The two ideas that came to me will definitely be something lazy, like rook c4, rook takes b4. This is obviously a slow strategic idea. I'm trying not to make too many, Trying not to take too many chances, right? You're just playing nice and solid. And the other way would be to play in the aggressive way and play pawn to h4. Do you guys understand the idea of h4? h4 is a very nice attacking idea. Either we're going to play pawn h5, and, well, if they take, well, they're going to get checkmated, right? The king's just opened up. And, well, if they don't take, then we can look about playing pawn to h6, and now we got an unstoppable checkmate on g7. So this h4, h5 idea is a very nice idea, which I recommend for you to add in your games if you're not using this tool already. This is a good way because, well, it minimizes that you don't have to move pawns in front of your king too much. Yeah, the h-pawn's moved. It's an outside pawn, so the king is not really too weak. And this one pawn can create major weaknesses for 3 pawns. So not a bad idea. Here white played queen e7, attacking the rook. The rook is really misplaced here. I'm not sure if black was planning on playing like e5 or something. Not that that does anything, but Chekhover does a nice idea. Queen e7, and where does this rook go? Oof. Rook to d8. Oof. Again, not too good. And here he sees the attacking idea and goes for it. Pawn to h4. It's pretty much game over at this point. At this point, it already says white's up a piece with 3 points. Rook to d7, trying to kick it out. And where do we move our queen to? Should we go for queen e8 check or queen to f6? One's definitely stronger than the other one. Here, keeping it nice and simple, queen to f6, threatening h5, h6. How does black defend against this? In the game, they did not find a good idea. Black went ahead and played queen e8. Most likely with the idea of, hey, let's go ahead and trade queens since I'm doing so badly in this situation. Even if they trade queens again, this won't be too great as we're going to win the pawn on b4. Bishop b4. So, yeah, just keep whittling away at these defenses. And black realizes that if they do go to endgame, it's lost. So, queen to e8. I do want to point out here one of the nice ideas about bishop b4 is not only that it attacks the c6 pawn, but it's also stopping rook d5, which will make trades. Again, in this kind of position where white has just so much activity, it's a good idea to not make trades. The reason why black might want to play is because after h5, the idea is to maybe slide the rook over here later. And, of course, black will try to make the trade. So, bishop to e4, queen to e8, and here we go, h5. There are no more rook d5 ideas, and white now has the good idea of maybe pawn takes, or maybe rook to h5. Rook to d8. Black just has to sit around and wait while white finds the master stroke. And here, white was able to find a very nice force calculation here to win. I won't make you calculate the whole thing, but if you want to try to calculate the whole win here, go for it. It's a long combination, but it is a very nice calculation exercise if you want to try. All right, if you just want to see the idea, here we go. Bishop takes exclam. If you don't take back, you're just losing, so bishop takes, and here was the idea. The queen is the defender for both c6, but also the checkmate on g7. What checkmate on g7? Hopefully you were calculating ahead. Pawn to h6. This queen cannot defend in both. It is overloaded, so king tried to go to f8. Yeah, queen f8 is just a longer way to lose. Now white will just take and take and take, and white is, yeah, just winning here. It's very sad that you can't even take the pawn because the rook is hanging over here. This was definitely the best way, but yeah, it was not played. King f8 gets played, and now it is another forced win here. White to move. Hopefully you see it. Rook takes. Rook takes. Rook takes. Of course, if queen takes, then again the queen was overloaded. The queen can take the rook. Black tried to be suave here. Plays rook to d7, and now another very nice move to win the game. Here we get a decisive win of material here. Look at this beautiful move. Rook to c8. How does this work? Don't we just take? Notice here, rook cannot go back as we'll simply just take, right? Well, after queen is forced to take, now you should see it. Remember, always look for those checks and keep calculating those until they work. Try to piece ideas together. And now we just win with a final skewer. Queen to h8 check, king up, and queen takes. This is a very nice positional game by Chekhover. Again, showing this nice positional idea. Typically, we keep building up the position until we're able to create tactical weaknesses in the position. Hope you guys enjoyed the game. I'll see you soon.